Welcome to this new episode of the Food Systems Talk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Food Systems Talk, co-organized by the issue-based Coalition on Sustainable Food Systems and the UNDP-convened Conscious Food Systems Alliance, CoFSA. My name is Thomas Legrand, and I will be moderating today's talk on a critical yet often overlooked dimension of sustainability, the role of consciousness and inner development for food systems transformation. As we navigate a global polycrisis marked by ecological degradation, hunger, and the fragility of food systems, there is growing recognition that external technical solutions alone are insufficient. And to truly transform food systems, we must address the root causes of the crisis, which often lie in our mindsets, our values, our beliefs, our inner world. So over the next 30 minutes, we'll discuss why inner development is so essential for sustainable food systems and how we can concretely apply consciousness approach into our food systems projects. So let's begin by hearing from Christine Wamsler, an internationally recognized academic expert in sustainability science, to explore the rationale for inner development in food systems transformation. Christine, welcome. A pleasure to have you. Could you share with us why inner development is needed for sustainability?
Thank you, Thomas. It's a pleasure to be with you. There are three key aspects for why we must consider human inner dimensions and inner development for sustainability. The first key aspect is that current sustainability approaches are insufficient. They have not catalyzed the necessary change. In fact, we are in the midst of a global polycrisis. We are facing an ecological catastrophe, climate change, biodiversity loss, food insecurity, a mental health crisis, poverty, war, and political turmoil. This is because, amongst other things, current approaches are based on a mistaken understanding that sustainability challenges such as climate change are external threats or crises. And since the way we define problems automatically determines our responses, we address them with external, mainly technical solutions. In addition, current policy approaches are based on the so-called information or knowledge deficit model. This model argues that if we could only provide all of the information we have to all of the people, all of our problems will be solved. This is, however, not correct. And finally, current approaches have not catalyzed the necessary change because there's a gap between the so-called sustainability and consciousness communities. In other words, there is a clear gap between the work of professionals who focus on personal development on the one hand and sustainability on the other hand. And this is hampering progress. As a result, while the professional and technological skills we need to face today's polycrisis have been increasing exponentially, our ability to use them wisely has not. The second key aspect is that there is a new scientific field that addresses these gaps and which has demonstrated the importance of addressing inner dimensions for sustainability and transformation. In fact, in recent years, a new field has emerged that looks at the interface between inner development, behavior, culture, and system transformation. And this new field is called inner transformation for sustainability. Research in this field has shown that sustainability challenges are a reflection of an inner human crisis that is based on an increasing separation or disconnection from self, others, and nature. This situation results from from our modern society's narrative or story of separation, which assumes that our thinking mind is separate from our feelings and bodily emotions, that we are all separate from each other, and that some humans are superior to others, and also that we humans are separate and superior to the rest of the natural world. Research on inner transformation has also shown that human inner dimensions, which include our individual and collective mindsets, beliefs, values, and worldviews, and associated inner capacities, are deep leverage points for change. In other words, what we can see, the crises that define our world today are just like the tip of the iceberg that is visible to us. But around 90% is hidden. And these are our underlying patterns of behavior, associated structures, and importantly, our inner dimensions that are ultimately responsible for creating the crisis that we see today. These underlying root causes are therefore also called deep leverage points for change. And finally, studies in the emergent field of inner transformation have also identified how to address inner dimensions across individual, collective, and systems levels in an integrated way. So on this basis, the third key aspect is that there's a growing body of scientific knowledge that can and must be tapped into if our aim is to accelerate sustainability and transformation across all sectors, including the food sector. In fact, there is a growing community of scholars who, together with educators and practitioners, have created a field of change and communities of practice that support a shift towards more sustainable paradigms and approaches. They provide concrete input, theories, and frameworks which show how more integrated sustainability approaches that link inner and outer dimensions of sustainability can be supported across sectors and across individual, collective, and systems levels. Examples of such frameworks are the inner-outer transformation model, which is a scientific framework, and the inner development goals, which is a communication tool. And both have been adopted by the Conscious Food System Alliance in their approach to food systems transformation.
Thank you, Christine, for shedding light on why inner development is so critical for sustainability. You mentioned that sustainability challenges often stem from a disconnection from self, others, and nature. It's a profound insight that shifts how we approach transformation. Could you expand on why inner development is needed specifically for food systems transformation?
Of course. The three key aspects that I explained before apply to all kinds of sectors and systems, including the food sector. In the context of food systems, we can also see that current mainstream approaches are insufficient and tend to focus on external factors as opposed to deep leverage points. This is unfortunate because the separation from self, others, and nature that I mentioned earlier also underlies today's global food crisis. In modern societies, this separation or alienation has become an inherent part of our mindsets, our culture, and the larger societal, institutional, and political structures we have all grown up with. In the case of food, this manifests in the following challenges. First, in terms of disconnection from self, we see increasing mental health issues such as burnout, depression, and suicide among people working in the food sector, particularly farmers. And we can also observe a growing prevalence of food-related diseases such as eating disorders and the worldwide obesity crisis. Second, in terms of the disconnection from others, we see growing polarization among food stakeholders, poor working conditions, and the marginalization of farmers within global value chain, and resultant disconnects between consumers, farmers, and the land their food comes from. Third, in terms of disconnection from nature, we can, for instance, see how industrial agriculture has led to exploitative production practices and environmental degradation. So put together, it becomes clear that we urgently need to address not only immediate needs, but also the root causes of today's food crisis, which are deeply intertwined with other sustainability challenges, such as climate change, biodiversity loss, inequality, poverty, and political turmoil. Food systems are highly complex, and transforming them requires addressing more than just symptoms-related behaviors and systems. We also must focus on the fundamental drivers of these issues. And this involves tackling both individual and collective inner dimensions of sustainability through targeted measures at individual, group, and systems levels. CoFSA has developed related activities, communities of practice, and also case studies that can serve as blueprints for other actors in this field.
Thank you, Christine, for sharing those examples and for emphasizing the need to address both individual and systemic dimensions of change. So I think this sets a powerful foundation for understanding the work of CoFSA. So thank you for introducing our alliance. CoFSA, the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, was convened by the United Nations Development Programme to bring together diverse stakeholders, farmers, indigenous communities, policymakers, businesses, and researchers around a shared goal, which is to cultivate the inner capacities needed for food systems transformation. And it came out of the recognition that this is often the missing piece of our work, we often focus on the technical work. And even when we focus on the how of change, we have been looking first more as multi-stakeholders dialogue. And that led us to recognize that there's actually this missing piece of inner transformation that is needed to activate the change we want to see. The inner capacity, awareness, compassion, systemic thinking are what enable individuals to better navigate complexity, foster collaboration, and drive transformative change. So by focusing on these aspects, we are seeking in CoFSA to transform not only external systems, but also the mindset, values, and behaviors that shape them. So our approach focuses on integrating consciousness approaches and practices, such as mindfulness, nature connection, nonviolent communication, into the practices and policies that shape food systems. So over the last 2 years, since we launched CoFSA, we have created a vibrant community of practice and learning of some 400 members and more than 4,000 followers. We have built a robust infrastructure for active member engagement and have convened retreats, workshops to really activate that members' engagement. We see they are so important. And we have shared learning through collective inquiries, looking at different entry points for this agenda, namely farmers' well-being and psychological resilience, regenerative local cultures, traditional wisdom for conscious food systems. And now we are looking at what this means for policy-making processes and multi-stakeholders dialogue. We have tested also a few interventions on the ground through a call for proposal. We have developed a methodology for local communities to discuss their values and come up with action plans about how they can be more intentional in shaping their culture, which is so important on the long term for sustainability. We have trained more than 100 of our members in our Conscious Food Systems Leadership Program. And I think in less than 2 years, we have really positioned that work and new narrative for food systems transformation. So at CoFSA, we believe that by fostering individual and collective transformation, we can unlock the systemic change needed to create food systems that are equitable, resilient, and regenerative. So next, I'm excited to introduce Katie Palmer, one of our cherished CoFSA members. We'll share a concrete example of this work in action through her journey with CoFSA, which has led her to integrate this inner dimension into her work with her team and more generally, our efforts at transforming food systems in Wales.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm thrilled to share the story of my journey as a member of CoFSA and how our project came to life thanks to the Conscious Food Incubator. So just to introduce myself and my organisation, I'm founder and head up Food Sense Wales. It's a small charity hosted within the Welsh National Health Service that seeks to co-create a food system in Wales that's good for people and the planet. A key part of this work is building a good food movement through a network of local food partnerships. These food partnerships are fostering community resilience by building lost connections between people and nature. I was introduced to the breathing room by a colleague in Welsh Government. She was developing approaches around the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Now, in 2015, Welsh Government introduced this Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. It's a piece of sustainable development legislation which places a duty on all public bodies to take consideration of future generations in all decision making. It's a world-first piece of legislation. The Act operates across 7 wellbeing goals and lays out 5 ways of working that public bodies should adopt to support better decision making. These 5 ways of working are relevant to the CoFSA approach, taking account of the long-term, collaboration, integration, prevention, and involving people of all ages and diversity. I joined CoFSA on the early part of its journey in 2021 through a co-creation process called the Breathing Room. I helped to develop the CoFSA manifesto and was invited to sit on the Inner Council in November 2022. And this is a group that helps define and steer the implementation of the CoFSA strategy. I was fortunate to attend CoFSA's first retreat at Dartington College in April 2023, and this gave me the opportunity to meet CoFSA colleagues from across the globe and to exchange ideas and experiences. It also equipped me in new consciousness approaches, including mindful eating and mindful walking. It was a fantastic space to take time to reflect and to think differently and more deeply. I consider my expertise to be in food systems, and when I began my CoFSA journey, I was certainly not an expert in consciousness approaches. But through my journey, there has been a crystallization for me of the importance of creating space and time to nurture relationships and to connect with people and nature at a deeper level. Offering respect, kindness, compassion, and gratitude for those that work with you and around you are absolutely fundamental to changing systems. I know this to be true from our collective achievements in Food Sense Wales, and I feel it from those in our sphere. I've also come to understand the importance of self-care and self-compassion, and I've been inspired by CoFSA to share these revelations and integrate into my own approach to leadership. Much of this insight came from being a test subject on the Conscious Food System Leadership course with the Inner Green Deal. The idea of the programme was to develop a more holistic approach to addressing the food system crisis through contemplative practices and cultivation of inner capacities following the Inner Development Goals framework, with its 5 dimensions, those being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. And with the acting came bringing meditation to my own team. So Food Sense Wales is a small team, but we work with a large number of partners. We all try and introduce mindfulness practices into our day-to-day work. Check-ins, mindfulness, and agendaless meetings are a few examples. We hold a community of practice once a month with all of our food partnerships, just to hold space, to share successes and concerns, and anything else. It often results in exchanges of ideas from everything from key pieces of work to a book recommendation or a recipe exchange. The sense of collective endeavour and mutual support this space brings is invaluable. Shared challenges, frustrations and advice when things aren't going to plan, and collective celebrations when they are. I'm grateful for my CoFSA journey for many reasons, but none greater than the facilitation of a beautiful friendship and collaboration with Teresa, founder of the Minerva Institute. Through the online breathing room, Teresa and I had an instant connection around our collective and complementary experience of school food. We felt in our hearts that there was a collaboration to be made, but we just needed to work out what it looked like and how to make it happen. Teresa and I had the opportunity to meet at that retreat in Dartington in 2023. And then we made a plan to apply for the CoFSA incubation funding. We were thrilled to be one of a handful of successful pilots, and work began across the water, time zones, 3 languages, and 2 cultures to create something beautiful. I'm not going to spoil the video, but I will say that the work in Brazil continues to unfold, and opportunities for us to welcome Teresa back to Wales are on the horizon. So that's it from me. Thank you. Back to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Katie, for that inspiring example. As we have seen today, CoFSA journey demonstrates that food system transformation is just not about what we do. It's about also ways of being, thinking, and relating. So through our work, we have learned that cultivating inner capacities like empathy, collaboration, system thinking is key to addressing the root causes of food systems challenges. These lessons are shaping our strategic plans for the future, particularly in regions like Europe and Central Asia, where we are looking forward to support the development of national hubs in particular, which are emerging already in the UK, France, Switzerland, to bring together CoFSA members in Europe and Central Asia. We'll be also organizing a CoFSA retreat in England at 42 acres at the end of October. And we'll be supporting key partners in Europe and Central Asia like EIT Food, the Oxford Real Farming Trust, Institut du Vivant et des Communs, the Future Food Institute, the Inner Green Deal, etc., in implementing this agenda. Our vision is to build a global movement that integrates inner development into food systems transformation, supporting individuals, organizations, and governments in creating regenerative, conscious change. I'd like to thank Christine and Katie for sharing their insights and everyone for joining us today. Let's continue this conversation and work together to transform food systems from within. You can join the movement by becoming a member. It's free and simple. You can access on our website, www.consciousfoodsystems.org, to become a member and find more updates and resources. Thank you very much for being with us today and looking forward to have you with us in the next talk. Please visit the Issue-Based Coalition on Sustainable Food Systems website to have more updates and insights on our joint work.